Okay, I'm going to talk about the dichotomy between working class consciousness and ruling class consciousness. So, on this channel, if you've watched any of my videos, I talk about class consciousness a lot, okay? I'm a big advocate for the working class. And this video is kind of reiterating an argument I've made many times, but it's a refinement of that argument. And ultimately, that's what this channel does. I try to come up with different ways to make the same arguments in order to hopefully get one of those arguments across to you. So, before I talk about that dichotomy, though, talk about consciousness in general, okay? What is consciousness? Well, consciousness is awareness, okay? So if you're conscious of something, you're aware of it, right? And, well, if you become aware or conscious of a problem or a threat, then that consciousness enables you to come up with a solution, a proactive solution to that threat in order to dissolve it, right? So, to provide an example of a problem or a threat, let's say you're trying to cross a road, okay? And, well, you get across the road. That's the problem. And the threat is the traffic, right? You're not going to close your eyes and run across the road. That wouldn't be very logical. You're going to use your consciousness, and in effect, you're going to use your eyesight. You're going to look both directions and make sure there's no oncoming traffic, right? You're going to come up with a proactive solution by looking for that traffic. And in effect, the proactive solution is waiting for a gap in the traffic. Then you're going to cross the road, right? This is a simple problem, okay? It's almost second nature. We don't actually think about the solution, right? We don't think about a proactive solution. We just do it, right? We can teach children to cross roads safely. But let's talk about a bigger problem, okay? And bigger problems require more sophisticated solutions. They require more proactive solutions, right? So 60% of people are living paycheck to paycheck right now, okay? That means that the working class is struggling. Can't afford their mortgage, can't afford their rent, can't afford a car payment, or maybe they can't afford food, right? If you can't afford your necessities, well, that's a problem. And if that problem goes too far, people are going to perhaps commit crimes in order to obtain those necessities, and that's not good at all. Okay, when people start committing crimes, well, that's a very unpredictable solution in the long term. So, to kind of make an analogy back to that crossing the road example, right now, because 60% of people are living paycheck to paycheck, that implies that working class consciousness is low. Okay, the magnitude of working class consciousness is low, and right now the working class are sitting on the side of the road, they're watching the traffic, and the threat is the ruling class, who effectively control the means of production in our economy right now. If that ruling class didn't control the means of production, then the working class would be able to afford the necessities, right? So the ruling class in this analogy is the traffic, right? Right now, because working class consciousness is so low and ruling class consciousness is so high, the ruling class, there's a 5-lane highway. They're all driving 70 miles an hour. They're all in like 18-wheelers and sports cars. And the working class is sitting on the side of the road with their thumbs up their asses. They have no clue as to how to cross this road. And they've been there for so long that they're starting to fight each other, right? They're starting to steal from each other, perhaps. So how do we how did we get here? Okay, this is the important question to ask. How is it that ruling class consciousness got so high, and in effect working class consciousness got so low? Okay, so working class and ruling class consciousness are opposed to each other. What that means is that one of them is high, the other is low. If one of them rises, the other lowers. This is like an inversely proportional relationship here. So if you think of it like a spectrum, to make an analogy between darkness and light, darkness and brightness, if it gets brighter, it gets less dark. If it gets darker, it gets less bright, right? That's how the relationship between ruling and working class consciousness works. When one of them rises, the other lowers again. So, again, how do we get here? Well, there's two ways that working class consciousness can rise, okay? And one of those ways is a free market, a capitalistic economy, okay? And what that means is that the working class organizes in the workplace. That could mean labor unions, labor strikes, worker cooperatives, or even boycotts, okay? So if the working class consciousness rises, they're going in a free market economy, they're going to use those labor movements to effectively take back control over the means of production. On the other hand, if instead of free market labor movements, the working class could also choose to elect representatives who will write economic policy that basically redistributes those means of production more effectively, more efficiently, right? And that would mean economic policy. That would mean electing people who write economic policy that perhaps raises taxes on the wealthy and redistributes it through welfare programs. These are the two ways that working class consciousness can rise and can redistribute the means of production, right? The same applies to ruling class consciousness. So if the ruling class wants to raise the ruling class consciousness, if they want to gain control of the means of production, they're going to basically kind of do the opposite of what the working class did. So they're going to perhaps union bust. They're going to make sure people can't organize into unions. They're going to try to get people to accept low wages. They're going to effectively gain control of the means of production in a free market economy. Or they're going to fund the campaigns of corrupt politicians who will then go into office and write economic policy that benefits that ruling class, right? So what we have here is interesting because a lot of people think that the problem with the economy is that it's too much capitalism or too much communism, too much socialism. That's not true at all. What's really happened is the way that economies really function is decided by this spectrum between working class and ruling class consciousness. So if ruling class consciousness is high, it's going to usher in capitalistic free markets that exploit the working class, and it's going to usher in socialism for the rich. It's going to usher in that top-down economic policy that lowers the taxes on the wealthy people, right? And diminishes those welfare programs. On the other hand, if working class consciousness is high, it's going to usher in labor movements, and it's going to usher in economic policy that benefits the working class. So, in other words, the capitalism versus communism debate is a distraction. In truth, the ruling class can use capitalistic and communistic means to benefit themselves, and vice versa. The working class can use capitalistic and communistic means to benefit themselves. It doesn't matter which strategy either of them chooses. They actually use both strategies. So if the working class wants to improve their lot in life, if they want to improve their ability to control the means of production, it's not about picking socialism or communism or capitalism. It's about raising class consciousness through both labor movements, free market movements, and the top-down economic policy. So we have to ask how exactly it is that the ruling class has managed to make these to maintain that high level of consciousness. Well, they use the corporate media, right? So to explain why, well, what does the corporate media do? Well, they sell you ideas, okay? So maybe there's a mainstream media segment that divides you, that props up culture divides. For example, race versus race. Okay, so black versus white, or maybe blue lives matter or black lives versus black lives matter, or maybe gender. So maybe men versus women, or even LGBT versus anti-LGBT, or religion, atheism versus Christianity, for example. The corporate media will prop up these culture divides, and if you get distracted by these culture divides, you are effectively sitting on the side of the road attacking your own working class. member, your own fellow working class members. You're attacking those people instead of working together to try to cross the road and to try to diminish that ruling class consciousness. This is how the corporate media controls you. They propagate fear within the working class. They tell you to blame your fellow working class citizen for your problems, for your economic problems, right? Instead of blaming the people who are actually controlling the means of production, instead of blaming the traffic, the 4-lane highway, right? And the traffic. Beyond just the mainstream media news segments, they also advertise things to you on the commercials, right? In the commercials. So if instead of focusing on raising working class consciousness, instead of doing that, if you decide to bury yourself in consumerism, buying sports cars and new TVs or whatever, then you diminish your ability to organize against the ruling class. The corporate media knows this, okay? Corporations know this. The ruling class knows this. They know that every minute that you spend thinking about the idea of owning some material good or the idea of a culture war is 1 minute less that you spend focusing on the class divide. This is why corporate media is your enemy. This is why if you vote for the people who are propped up in corporate media, those people will inevitably go into office and write economic policy that benefits the ruling class. And if you look at the past 40 years, 45 years, this is exactly what's happened. The corporate media became very prominent in the 80s and beyond, and in that process, they have manipulated the public to blame each other for their problems, the working class to blame each other for their problems. Meanwhile, the ruling class is running away with the means of production. They own the means of production now. It's never been communism versus capitalism. It has always been ruling class consciousness versus working class consciousness. And the thing is that when you start building these labor movements and you start electing better politicians, this is a very fast, slippery slope that solves this problem for the working class. Okay, it solves the problem very quickly. All it requires is a few unions and maybe a few strikes and a couple economic policies, a couple new tax brackets, right? We can fix this problem very quickly, okay? But again, a minute less that you spend, if you spend 1 minute focusing on culture divides, that's a minute less you have to spend on working class consciousness. They know this, okay? Again, the ruling class understands that if they can distract you amongst yourselves, and if they can distract you with consumerism, you're going to be very ineffective at creating a working class movement. It's not about capitalism versus socialism versus communism. It is about working class consciousness. So divide and conquer is the strategy that has been used for centuries by the ruling class. They divide the public amongst themselves so that they don't blame the ruling class for their actual problems. Yeah, divide and conquer. If you don't know how divide and conquer strategies function, then I made a video on that a while back, but you have to look into the nature of divide and conquer strategies. And the way that they work is divide people amongst themselves and conquer them when they don't know who to blame, when they don't know how to come up with those proactive solutions, and in effect, when they can't figure out how to cross the road. So what we need to do is we need to build some stoplights and then stop all that traffic in that ruling class, kick them out of their cars, take control of those 18-wheelers and those sports cars, and then we drive. And then they're sitting on the side of the road. And here's the thing. We don't need to leave them on the side of the road. We can let them drive too. Everybody can drive. Okay? That's the thing. It's like when this pendulum between ruling class and working class consciousness, when it goes all the way towards working class consciousness, it doesn't mean the ruling class suffers. It just means less people suffer in totality, okay? It means everyone benefits. Maybe the ruling class has a few less sports cars and a few less mansions, but Their needs are still being met. They're still going to be happy. And that's what they may not even realize. That's what the ruling class may not realize. Oftentimes, I believe that the billionaires in the world, they're just so fearful that they're just collecting excess because they are afraid of everything and everyone. They're afraid of the working class burning their houses down. We don't want to do that. We want everyone to be happy. And if working class rises, it effectively creates a society where everyone's needs are met and no one has any drive to commit crime. It's like fear is actually the underlying driver here. We fear scarcity. And in today's economy, with today's technology, we have the capacity to diminish scarcity to a greater extent than we ever have in human history. And if we embrace that fact, then we all can live harmoniously. But so long as we remain stuck in our old scarcity mindsets, we will continue to take advantage of each other, to exploit, and this working class versus ruling class, this pendulum swing will just keep swinging back and forth until we can realize that, again, our technology has enabled the capacity for abundance. Embrace a mindset of abundance. Leave behind the scarcity. Thanks for watching.